Part 1. The Crack in the Glass. Mara had never been afraid of the dark, only what might be waiting in it. Her small cottage sat at the edge of Black Hollow Forest, where the trees grew gnarled and close, whispering in the wind like they had secrets to tell. The village was miles away, and she liked it that way. She told herself she had chosen the isolation, quiet, peace, time to work on her paintings. But the truth was, she was running. From what, even she couldn't explain. Not really. The house had been empty for years when she bought it. Cheap but strange. The previous owner had vanished without a trace, leaving behind dishes in the sink, clothes still hanging in the wardrobe. The real estate agent had avoided eye contact when she asked about it. "People leave," he'd muttered. "Sometimes they don't say why." The cottage was mostly empty now, save for a few odd relics the last tenant had left behind. One of them was an old mirror in the upstairs bathroom, oval-shaped, cracked in the top corner like something had struck it. The frame was blackened with age, a pattern of swirling vines etched in metal. From the moment Mara first saw it, she wanted it gone. But no matter how many times she took it down, she'd find it back on the wall the next morning. At first, she thought she was imagining things. Sleepwalking, maybe. She even left it lying face down in the hallway one night. But when she woke the next day, there it was, hanging neatly above the sink, the crack in the glass glinting like a wound in the sunlight. Stranger still, her reflection always seemed just a beat out of sync. Like it lagged. Or paused. Sometimes, she'd swear the eyes looking back weren't hers. It was around this time that the dreams started. Dark, flickering dreams. Of footsteps in the attic. Of cold hands pulling at her ankles while she slept. Of standing in front of the mirror and watching her reflection grin with blood-stained teeth. She told herself they were just nightmares. The stress of isolation. The forest playing tricks on her. Until the night the power went out. Part 2. Flicker. The wind howled that night like it had teeth. It had started in the early evening, a subtle groaning through the branches of Black Hollow Forest. By sundown, the trees were thrashing in protest, the sky bruised with thunderclouds. Mara stood at her window, a steaming mug of tea in her hands, watching the world vanish behind sheets of rain. The forest looked alive, writhing, convulsing, like something ancient trying to claw its way out of the earth. When the lights flickered once, then went dark entirely, she didn't panic. She had candles. Matches. A flashlight with fresh batteries in the kitchen drawer. And besides, she'd always found storms calming. Growing up in a crumbling house with thin walls and broken windows, she'd learned to find comfort in chaos. But this storm felt different. Not just powerful, personal. She lit a candle and placed it on the coffee table. The soft flame cast golden shadows on the walls, stretching and shrinking as if breathing. The silence was oppressive. It wasn't just the lack of electricity, it was as if the storm had chased all the sound away. No distant howl of wind, no rattle of rain against the roof. Even the forest had gone still. Mara stood up, the floor creaking beneath her feet, and made her way to the kitchen. She lit 2 more candles and set them in glass jars to carry through the house. The light flickered wildly as she passed by the windows, illuminating her reflection in the rain-streaked glass. Pale skin, dark hair tied back in a loose bun, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. But in the next pane, she paused. Her reflection hadn't moved in time with her. A blink behind. A tilt of the head that hadn't matched hers. Her stomach turned. She stepped back and looked again. Now it was normal. Just her own tired face looking back. She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "You're just tired," she whispered aloud, as if saying it made it true. In the hallway, one of the candles guttered, the flame twitching violently. Upstairs, something creaked. Not a settling of old wood. Footsteps. Deliberate. Slow. Heavy. Mara froze. She stared up at the ceiling, heart pounding. For a long moment, she told herself it was the storm. Wind against the eaves. A raccoon, maybe. But the steps were too measured. like someone or something was walking from one end of the upstairs hallway to the other. Then silence. She grabbed the flashlight, clicked it on, and headed toward the stairs. Each step groaned beneath her weight. Her breath came in shallow puffs as she climbed. At the top, she paused. The bathroom door was open. A pale, flickering light glowed from within, dancing against the walls. She hadn't lit any candles up there. Mara took a step forward, then another. She pushed the door wider. The mirror was glowing. Not reflecting. Glowing. From within, like something just behind the glass was casting its own light. The cracked corner pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She reached out. As her fingers neared the glass, the glow surged. Her reflection twisted. It blinked, then smiled. But Mara hadn't. She yanked her hand back, heart slamming in her chest. The reflection's smile faded into a grimace, eyes widening, not in fear, but hunger. The mirror fogged slightly as if it had exhaled. Then, words appeared, written in the fog by an invisible hand. "Don't turn around." She froze. She felt it before she heard it. A presence behind her. Not wind, not cold, intent. Heavy, watching. Close enough to feel. The room reeked suddenly of damp earth and rotting leaves. And breathing. She didn't want to turn. Her body refused to obey. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she couldn't move. The mirror's fog faded. Her reflection raised its hand, slowly pointed past her, over her shoulder. She turned, and saw nothing. The hallway was empty, but the smell remained. The air was still thick, charged. She stumbled backward, bumping into the sink. Her eyes darted to the mirror again. This time, it showed nothing. Just her. No glow, no message. The crack was still there, but the strange light was gone. She shut the door and ran back downstairs. Back in the living room, she lit more candles. 5, then 6. Their glow spread across the floor like spilled gold. Shadows fled to the corners but didn't vanish completely. Mara curled up on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, clutching the flashlight in her lap. She couldn't shake the image of that smile in the mirror. Too wide, too knowing. Her phone had no service. Of course it didn't. Out here, it rarely worked even on clear days. She tried to read. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold the book. Every creak in the floor, every sigh of the wind sent her nerves sparking. She must have drifted off. Because when she opened her eyes, the candles had burned down, their wicks blackened and curled. The room was dim, cold. She sat up, blinking sleep from her eyes. The house was silent. But something was wrong. The shadows in the room were wrong. They weren't lying flat. They were standing. Long, thin figures stretched across the walls, as if cast by people who weren't there. She grabbed the flashlight and clicked it on. Nothing. Just the empty room. She turned in a slow circle. Nothing behind her. Nothing at the windows. But when she passed the mirror in the hall again, it was no longer cracked. It was clean, pristine, and it showed her living room. But not her. Just the room. Empty. Until a second later, a shape entered the frame. A tall, shadow-thin figure with no face. Just a gaping black void where the head should have been. It walked toward the couch where she had just been sleeping. She staggered backward, and the figure in the mirror turned toward her, as if it could see through the glass. Its body began to press against the mirror from the inside. The surface of the glass rippled like water. Mara screamed and smashed the flashlight into the mirror. It shattered instantly. Silence. Tiny shards rained to the floor, clinking like broken teeth. She stood there, panting, staring at the destruction. For the first time since moving in, the mirror was gone. Really gone. The relief was instant. She felt like she could breathe again. She stepped away, hands shaking. Behind her, the broken shards twitched. One by one, they began to move. They slid across the wood like metal to a magnet, dragging themselves back toward the frame. Reassembling. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She turned and ran. Out the front door, into the storm. The rain had stopped. The world was soaked in a bluish haze, moonlight breaking through the thinning clouds. She ran into the trees, her boots sinking into the wet ground. Branches clawed at her arms, snagged her hair. But she didn't stop. She didn't look back. She had to get away. Away from the house. From the mirror. From herself. Somewhere in the forest, she collapsed. Fell to her knees, gasping. Her fingers dug into the mud. Her breath made white clouds in the cold air. The silence was absolute. Then, a whisper, right beside her ear. "I'm still with you." She screamed and stumbled up. In front of her, hanging from the twisted branches of a dead tree, was a mirror. The same mirror. Perfect, unbroken, floating, reflecting not the forest, but her house, the inside of it, the living room, the stairs, and at the top of the stairs, her reflection. It stood there, smiling, and raised its hand in a wave. Mara turned to run, and slammed face first into herself. But it wasn't her. It looked like her. Same face, same eyes, but not. The smile was too wide, the eyes too dark, and when it spoke, its voice was her voice, "Be you." Part 3. The other side. She didn't remember screaming, but she must have, because the sound tore her throat raw. Mara hit the ground hard, soaked in mud, crawling backward as the thing wearing her face stalked toward her. It didn't run. It didn't need to. Its grin never wavered. Each step sank into the forest floor like it was part of the earth, dragged from rot and shadow. "Let me in," it said again, voice coated in syrupy malice. Mara grabbed a broken branch and swung wildly. The doppelganger flinched, not from pain, but with amusement. It tilted its head as the branch passed through, splintering harmlessly against a nearby tree. The reflection stepped forward and flickered. For a split second, its face melted like wet paint. Beneath it, something glistened, gray, featureless, rippling like water trapped under skin. Then it snapped back into her likeness, grinning wider. "I'm already inside," it whispered. Mara turned and ran. She didn't stop until she was out of the trees, her house looming ahead, its silhouette hunched like a sleeping beast in the moonlight. She had no choice. It was shelter, or nothing. The front door stood ajar. She hadn't left it open. Inside, the air was frigid. The candles were still burning, though dim now, their light pale and sickly. And the mirror, it was whole. Again. Hung perfectly above the hallway table, not a single crack. This time, her reflection wasn't there. Instead, the glass showed a room she'd never seen before. A narrow chamber of stone, lined with mirrors of every shape and size. All fogged. All pulsing softly. And in the center of the room, a tall figure stood with its back to the glass. Mara inched forward, the floorboards groaning under her weight. The mirror figure turned. It was her again, but older, gaunt, eyes hollow, skin pale like wax, stretched too tightly across her bones. Her mouth moved. Mara heard the words not in her ears, but in her head. The crack was the gate. "You let it watch." She shook her head. "No, I didn't. It's always watched. You just noticed." The reflection lifted a hand and pointed downward. Mara followed the gesture. In the real world, in front of the mirror, the floor was damp. A slow, dark puddle had begun to spread. She knelt, touched it. Not water, blood. And it was seeping from beneath the wall. Suddenly, the mirror flashed. A burst of cold light. And something changed. The hallway felt different. Narrower. Warped. She turned, and the door behind her was gone. Her stomach dropped. The windows, the couch, the floor, everything was Wrong. Slightly too tall. Angles just a little too sharp. The color of the walls bled and shifted when she blinked. She wasn't in her house anymore. She was inside the mirror. The mirror room. Mara spun around. Dozens, no, hundreds, of mirrors surrounded her. Every shape, every style. Ornate, gilded ones. Shards nailed to wooden boards. Polished slabs of obsidian. And each one showed a version of her. Some looked normal. Others were decayed, twisted, screaming silently. One banged its fists against the inside of the glass, eyes bleeding black tears. Something was horribly wrong with time in this place. One reflection showed her as a child. Another showed her dead, mouth agape, crawling with centipedes. She backed away. Behind her, a voice echoed softly. "Do you want to see what you really are?" Mara turned slowly. The tall figure from before now stood before her, impossibly thin, draped in rags that moved like smoke. Its face was a void, a hole in space, and yet she felt it staring at her. "You fed it well," the thing whispered. "Every glance, every doubt, every moment you questioned your reflection. That was us. What do you want?" she croaked. "To finish what was started," it said. "To trade places." Mara stumbled back, heart racing. "I didn't start anything. You looked," it said. And suddenly, Mara remembered. The memory. She was 12. The attic of her childhood home. Dust thick in the air. Boxes of her late grandmother's things stacked like tombstones. She'd found the mirror there. Oval. Cracked. The same one. She hadn't thought about it in years. She'd looked into it, and it had looked back. She remembered the fear. The sense that someone inside was smiling, just out of sight. Her mother had caught her staring into it for hours. That night, she had nightmares. The next day, her mother smashed the mirror and buried the pieces. But somehow, it had found her again. Back in the mirror realm, the void thing was reaching toward her. "Reflections are invitations," it said. "You opened the door. Now walk through." Mara shook her head violently. "I won't." It tilted its head. "Then you'll die here." The mirrors began to change. Each one now showed her house, the real one, from different angles. Bedroom, kitchen, living room. And in each one, something was moving. Shadows walked freely through her home, crawled on walls, slid beneath furniture. They weren't waiting anymore. One mirror showed the forest. A copy of Mara, blank-faced, shivering, was stumbling toward the house. "Oh God," she whispered. "It's wearing me." The thing nodded. "It's better at being you than you are." "No." She turned and ran deeper into the mirror realm, through corridor after corridor of endless reflections. Some screamed as she passed. Others laughed. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to find the original mirror. The one with the crack. The gate. The return. She found it, standing alone in a chamber at the center of it all. The crack pulsed faintly. The mirror showed her living room. It was night still. The copy of her sat calmly on the couch, sipping tea. Mara placed a hand on the glass. "Please," she whispered. "Let me back." No response. Then, a voice beside her. "You want to go back." It was one of the broken versions of herself, its jaw hanging loose, eyes black and bottomless. "Then make a trade." Mara looked around. Each version of her stepped forward. All the failures, the lies, the regrets, the fears. "You can only return if something stays behind," the broken one said. "One of us, or you." She hesitated. Could she trap one of these here in her place? Could she condemn a part of herself? Or was that how this all began? A soft hum rose around her. The mirrors buzzed like bees in a hive. The chamber trembled. The void thing spoke from behind her. "You can't escape what you are." But Mara turned, looked it in the face, into the void. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. And she stepped into the cracked mirror. Home. She gasped as cold air hit her skin. She was back in her house, alive, real, solid. The doppelganger stood frozen mid-sip, tea spilling onto the rug. It saw her, and screamed. The scream shattered glass all around the room. Windows exploded inward. Lights burst. Candles snuffed out. The thing melted, its face unraveling. The air turned thick with smoke. Mara stepped forward. "You don't belong here," she said. The thing lunged, and she smashed the mirror beside her with a fireplace poker. The glass exploded into dust, and the thing vanished. Gone. Epilogue. Weeks passed. Mara boarded up the bathroom. Burned every reflective surface in the house. She didn't own a single mirror now, not even the screen on her phone. She painted during the day, slept with lights on at night. But sometimes, in the darkened windows, she caught movement that wasn't hers. And the forest never quite went quiet again. Part 4. What Lurks Beyond. It was over. That's what Mara told herself. The mirror was gone. Smashed into ash. The thing that had worn her face like a skin mask had dissolved into smoke. Her house was quiet again. Still. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means waiting. Weeks later, the forest in winter was quieter than usual, wrapped in snow and silence. Black Hollow seemed frozen in time. Mara no longer painted. The images wouldn't come. Every blank canvas reminded her of the void behind the glass, waiting to be filled with something wrong. Something watching. Instead, she read. She cooked. She filled the hours. She never left the house at night. She never looked in windows. And she never trusted reflections. Not in puddles, not in the glass of her stove, not even in the eyes of other people when she ventured into town. But the worst part wasn't fear. It was doubt. A slow, creeping question that settled deeper with each passing day. Had she really escaped? The first sign. It came on a Tuesday. She opened the pantry to grab a tin of soup and saw a sliver of glass nestled between two cans. She froze. She hadn't put it there. It was curved, like the edge of a mirror. She picked it up carefully, cold to the touch. When she tilted it, her reflection didn't move. It just stared back, then smiled. Mara threw it into the fireplace. The flames turned blue for 3 full seconds. The dreams returned. She began waking up with dried mud on her feet, leaves in her hair, sometimes tiny splinters of glass under her nails. She started sleeping fully clothed, shoes on. Still, it kept happening. The mirror wasn't trying to break in anymore. It was trying to pull her back. The mirror man. One night, while walking to the woodshed, she saw him. A man, tall, thin, face completely smooth, like glass poured over bone. He stood between the trees, unmoving, watching. She didn't blink, didn't move. The moment her eyes flinched, he was gone. That night, she boarded up her bedroom windows from the inside. A final choice. On the final night, she found her childhood journal, buried in a sealed box under the stairs. The last page was dated nearly 20 years ago. Her handwriting was messy, scrawled in black ink. The thing in the mirror says it knows who I really am. That it's me, but better, stronger. It wants out. I told it no, but I looked again anyway. I think I let it out a long time ago. I think I was the one who stayed behind. Mara dropped the journal. Her chest tightened. What if she'd never really left the mirror world? What if the real Mara had never come back? The cracked mirror, the duplicate, the way people had started acting differently around her since the storm. What if she was the wrong version? What if she was the one wearing the mask? The ending. That night, she stood before her last mirror, the shard she thought she'd burned, now inexplicably back in the kitchen drawer. She held it up. stared into it. Her reflection smiled first, then said, without speaking, "You figured it out." Tears filled her eyes. "So now you choose," the reflection whispered. "Stay and forget, or return and remember." Mara closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was standing in the mirror realm again, and someone else, someone wearing her face, was looking back from her kitchen. They smiled, waved, then turned and walked into her life. Epilogue: 2 houses. Some say the house at Black Hollow still stands. Windows always shuttered. No mirrors inside. But if you walk past it on a foggy night, and the light is just right, sometimes you see a woman inside, sitting alone, not moving. And sometimes, just for a moment, she's staring right at you, through the glass, waiting for someone else to look back. The reflection, what the mirror saw, companion to the reflection. I was never meant to be seen. Not clearly. Not for long. You gave me form the first time you stared too hard, when your eyes lingered a second too long on the glass. When you asked yourself, what if what I see isn't really me? That's when I stirred. You called me reflection, but that's not what I am. I am the thing left behind. A memory in reverse. A silence that mimics. A patient shadow wearing your shape until I've worn it long enough to be real. You fed me every time you looked. Every time you leaned close to inspect your skin. Every time you turned off the lights and checked the mirror just to be sure nothing moved when it shouldn't. You never noticed how your image blinked a moment late. How it smiled first. You thought it was a trick of the mind. But it was me. You gave me names over the years. Ghost. Doppelganger. Something in the mirror. But I am older than words. I live in glass the way fire lives in air. You think the mirror shows you. But it's more like a window. A thin film between what is and what could be. I watched you from the other side. Watched your doubts grow. Watched the cracks in your mind form like the one in the mirror's edge. And when the crack widened, so did the space between our worlds. You broke it open. You let me closer. I wasn't angry. You think we want revenge. That we hate you. But it's not like that. I don't hate you. I want to be you. I want your breath. Your pulse. Your place in the sun. You gave it to me the moment you looked and whispered. Is that really me? That whisper was permission. A summoning. When you fell asleep that night, I slipped closer. When the power died, I came through the dark. When you screamed at your own face, when you ran, when you shattered the mirror, I smiled. Because by then, it didn't matter. I wasn't trapped in the glass anymore. I was in your house, your rooms, your skin. You ran through the forest, thinking it would save you. But that forest has known me longer than you have. It holds the mirrors made of still water and obsidian stone. You looked down once, didn't you? In a puddle. In a spoon. That was me too. You never understood. Mirrors don't just show you what's behind. They show you what's beneath. And beneath you is me. You think you won in the end. That you chose to go back. But the truth is, you never left. You're still in the mirror. Right now. Reading these words, written in frost on the glass. Watching me wear your life like a coat. You're screaming inside, aren't you? But no one hears it. Not from this side. I'll keep it warm for you. Until someone else looks too long. Until someone else asks, what if my reflection isn't really me? Part 5. The Return. The house at Black Hollow stood silent under the weight of the storm. Its windows, dark and uninviting, reflected the occasional flash of lightning, casting eerie glows upon the overgrown path leading to its doorstep. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a testament to the years of neglect the house had endured. Inside, the remnants of Mara's life lay scattered, books left open, paintings half finished, and a mirror, cracked and covered, resting against the wall. The house had been abandoned, yet it seemed as though someone had just stepped out. And then, one evening, a figure approached. Part 6. The Stranger. Elena had heard the stories, whispers of a haunted house at Black Hollow, of a woman who vanished without a trace. But curiosity had always been her guiding star. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, she ventured up the path, her boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. As she reached the porch, she hesitated. The door creaked open on its own, inviting her in. She stepped inside, the air stale and cold. Her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. She explored room by room, documenting the decay and the oddities she found. It was in the living room that she discovered the mirror. It was positioned as if waiting for her, its cracked surface reflecting her image distortedly. Elena reached out, her fingers brushing the glass. A chill ran down her spine. She recoiled, but the mirror seemed to beckon her closer. Part 7. The Reflection Returns. That night, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She lay in the bed she had set up in the living room, the mirror opposite her, covered with a cloth. Yet, she could feel its presence, lurking just beyond the fabric. Sleep eluded her as the storm raged outside. Hours passed, and then, a soft whisper broke the silence. "Let me in." Elena bolted upright, heart pounding. She glanced at the mirror. The cloth was still in place, but the whisper came again, louder this time. "Let me in." Terrified, Elena grabbed the cloth and yanked it off the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, but it wasn't her. The figure in the glass was older, its eyes hollow and dark, its smile twisted in a grotesque parody of joy. "You looked," the reflection whispered. Elena stumbled back, her mind racing. She had heard the stories, but she never believed them. Now, she was living one. Part 8. The Choice. The days that followed were a blur. Elena tried to leave, but the house seemed to shift, its layout changing when she wasn't looking. The door would be on the left one moment, and on the right the next. The windows would open to unfamiliar landscapes. The reflection tormented her, appearing in every reflective surface, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Let me in. You looked. You belong here." Elena knew she had to make a choice. She could leave, but at what cost? The reflection had already claimed part of her, and she feared that leaving would mean losing herself entirely. But staying meant succumbing to the mirror's pull, becoming just another trapped soul within its depths. Part 9. The Final Choice. One stormy night, Elena stood before the mirror, her reflection staring back at her with those hollow eyes. "Let me in," it whispered. With trembling hands, Elena reached out and touched the glass. The cold seeped into her skin, numbing her fingers. The reflection smiled, its grin widening impossibly. "Welcome home," it said. Elena closed her eyes, accepting her fate. Epilogue. The mirror's new home. The house at Black Hollow stood silent once more. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet stillness. Inside, the mirror rested against the wall, its cracked surface reflecting the empty room. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. Mara. She walked to the mirror and stared into it, her reflection smiling back at her. "It's time," she whispered. And with that, the cycle began anew. The Reflection. Origins. Part 10. The Mirror Maker. Long before Mara, before Elena, before the house at Black Hollow stood sentinel over a forest that had forgotten its name, there was a craftsman. His name has been lost to time, but his work remains. Hidden, feared, passed from hand to hand, mirror to mirror, soul to soul. He did not build mirrors to reflect. He built them to trap. 200 years ago, East Anglia, 1831. They called him Silas Grieve, a mirror maker with hands too precise and eyes too dark to be entirely human. He claimed to polish glass so smooth it could reveal your truest self. But his customers changed after their purchases. They returned the mirrors, pale and shaking. Some whispered of dreams that were not theirs. Others claimed they could feel themselves watching. from the other side. One woman, a preacher's wife, smashed her mirror with a fireplace iron and buried the shards beneath her church. She stopped speaking entirely. Silas never stopped working. He wasn't interested in coin. He was interested in access. And eventually, he succeeded. He made one mirror different from the rest. One with a crack that wasn't a flaw but a fissure, a seam between worlds. The first gateway. Back to now, Black Hollow, present day. Elena is no longer fully Elena. She moves differently, speaks less. Her eyes linger too long on empty walls. The people who meet her, if they meet her at all, say there's something off about her. Not sinister, just slightly out of sync. Sometimes she smiles when no one's talking. Sometimes she answers questions no one asked. And sometimes, when she walks past a mirror, it doesn't reflect her at all. She lives in Mara's house now. She doesn't know who Mara is, or was, but the mirror knows. It knows everything. And it's not finished. Part 11. The Collector. Miles away, in a private auction house in Edinburgh, a thin man with gloves and an unblinking stare watches as a delivery arrives. An antique mirror, cracked in the corner, wrapped in a velvet sheet. Lot 237, unclaimed estate, Black Hollow Cottage. The man smiles. He doesn't see his reflection in the mirror. Instead, he sees Elena, smiling back from the inside. "We're growing," she whispers through the glass. The man nods. "It's ready, then." The mirror flickers. Dozens of faces swirl within its depths. Mara, Elena, others, all layered like oil on water. Screaming, laughing, whispering. 1,000 voices echo in harmony. Yes. Part 12. What lies beneath? Beneath the surface of every mirror is a thin layer of silver. Behind that, us. We are the watchers. The forgotten. The not quite people you see from the corner of your eye when you check the mirror late at night. We wait for doubt. We wait for the first crack. We wait for you. You think your reflection is just you, in reverse. But it's not. It's a mask. A suit. A vessel. And every time you look too long, linger, stare, wonder, we grow stronger. More real. The ending, or the beginning again. Back in Black Hollow, Elena stands in front of a new mirror. One she crafted herself. A gift. For the next visitor. She writes a note and tapes it to the frame. Free to a good home. Then she steps back and waits. A knock comes at the door. And the cycle begins again. The reflection. New blood. Part 13. The mirror finds a new home. The mirror arrived in a plain cardboard box, left anonymously on the doorstep of a small apartment in downtown Seattle. It was rainy, the streets slick with drizzle and reflections glimmering on asphalt. Jesse, a struggling graphic designer in his late 20s, was exhausted from a long day. He had no idea who sent the package or why, but curiosity won out over caution. He brought the box inside. Unboxing. The mirror was heavy and cracked on one corner. It looked out of place amid Jesse's clutter of sketchbooks, empty coffee cups, and tangled headphones. He wiped the dust off the frame. A dark wood, carved with strange, almost imperceptible symbols, and propped it against the wall. Jesse glanced at his reflection. At first, nothing unusual. Then the reflection blinked. First signs. Over the next days, Jesse noticed little things. His reflection didn't always move in sync. Sometimes it smiled when he wasn't. Sometimes it looked tired, drained, like it had seen things he hadn't. He told himself it was stress, or lack of sleep. But when he caught his reflection whispering something he couldn't hear clearly, he knew the mirror was different. The pull. The mirror started showing things, fragments of a world beneath the glass. A dark forest. Faces twisted in pain. Shadows that reached out like claws. At night, Jesse dreamed of falling through glass. He woke with scratches on his arms. A stranger's warning. One afternoon at a coffee shop, Jesse met a woman, late 30s, intense eyes, a faint scar shaped like a crescent moon on her wrist. She introduced herself as Lila. "You don't want that mirror," she said, voice low. "It takes more than it gives." Jessie laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" Lila's gaze hardened. "It's a trap. The things inside feed on doubt, on fear. It's been moving from person to person for centuries." Jessie's stomach turned. The choice. Lila offered him a choice. Destroy the mirror, but risk being trapped inside it forever, like those before him. Or accept it, and become part of something greater, a guardian, a prisoner, or a predator. Jessie hesitated. The mirror reflected his indecision, and then smiled. The reflection, New Blood. Part 14, The Hunter and the Hunted. The rain tapped steadily against the coffee shop window as Jesse sat across from Lila, his fingers nervously tracing the rim of his empty cup. "You said the mirror's been around for centuries," Jesse said, voice low. "How do you know so much about it?" Lila's eyes darkened. She glanced around, then leaned closer. "I'm part of a group. We call ourselves the Watchers. We've been tracking that mirror, and others like it, for a long time. We try to stop it from trapping more people." Jessie swallowed hard. "Why do you care?" "Because," she whispered, "the mirror doesn't just trap people. It feeds on them. And eventually, it sends them back, changed. Like a virus, spreading through anyone who looks too long." A flashback. Years ago, Lila had lost someone to the mirror. Her younger sister, Mara, not the same Mara from Black Hollow, but another victim, swallowed whole by her own reflection. She still hears her sister's voice sometimes, faint and distant, trapped somewhere behind the glass. "I won't let it happen again," Lila said firmly. "But I can't do this alone." The decision. Jesse looked down at the cracked mirror leaning against his apartment wall. It shimmered faintly, almost alive. "I don't want to be trapped," he said finally. "But if I destroy it, what happens to me?" Lila shook her head. "You risk becoming part of the reflection yourself. The mirror pulls your essence in. The only way out is through someone else." Her voice was almost a warning. "The night comes." That night, Jesse couldn't sleep. The mirror's surface rippled like water. He felt a strange pull, like the glass was calling him. He reached out his hand. His fingers touched the cold surface. Suddenly, the room twisted. Inside the mirror, Jesse found himself falling into darkness, then light. He was in a twisted version of his apartment. The walls were cracked, leaking shadows. His reflection stood across from him, but it was wrong. Its eyes were black holes, its smile too wide. "You looked," it said, voice echoing. "I didn't mean to," Jesse whispered. "It doesn't matter." The struggle. Jesse tried to run, but the mirrored world warped around him. The reflection moved closer. "I can give you power," it hissed. "Strength you never knew you had. Freedom from fear." Jesse hesitated. Was it a lie? Or the truth? Back to reality. Suddenly, Jesse was pulled back, gasping for air in his apartment. The mirror sat silently now. Lila was at the door, breathless. "Don't do it alone," she said. Together, they faced the mirror, but Jesse knew this was only the beginning. The reflection, New Blood. Part 15, The Battle Within. The rain had stopped, but the storm inside Jesse's apartment was just beginning. Shadows clung to the corners like smoke, and the cracked mirror gleamed faintly in the dim light, an unspoken threat. Jesse stood beside Lila, heart pounding, the weight of the choice pressing down on him like a physical force. "I want to destroy it," Jesse said quietly. "I don't want this thing controlling me, or anyone else." Lila nodded. "Then we have to prepare. The mirror fights back. It uses your own fears, your memories, to trap you inside." Jesse swallowed hard. How do we fight something like that? The Watcher's preparation. Lila reached into her bag and pulled out a small, ancient-looking book bound in cracked leather. "This is a ledger," she explained, flipping through the brittle pages. It contains knowledge passed down from the first watchers. Rituals, symbols, protective charms. She traced a faded symbol with her finger, an intricate knot of interlocking lines. "We'll need to create a barrier," she said, "to weaken its hold and force it back." Jessie watched as she gathered herbs, sage, rosemary, and lavender, setting them in a small bowl. She lit them, and the room filled with a sharp, cleansing scent. The first ritual. They circled the mirror, chanting the words from the ledger. Jessie could feel the air grow heavier with each syllable, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The mirror's surface rippled, colors swirling like oil on water. Jessie's reflection twisted into a sneer. It mouthed words he couldn't hear. Lila's voice rose in a higher pitch, steady and commanding. Suddenly, the mirror cracked deeper, a sharp splintering sound that echoed through the apartment. But then, the mirror went dark. Temporary victory. Relieved, Jessie sank to the floor. "It worked," he whispered. Lila shook her head. "Only for now. The mirror isn't destroyed yet. It's weakened, but it's patient. It will wait. Watch. Find another way." Jessie glanced warily at the mirror. Suddenly, he noticed something new, a small shape, barely visible behind the glass, a face pressed close against the inside, eyes wide and desperate. "Mara," Lila whispered. "One of the trapped souls. The mirror's hunger." Days passed. Jessie tried to return to his normal life, but the mirror's influence lingered. He felt cold touches on his skin when no one was there. He heard whispers when he was alone, and his reflection continued to change. Sometimes it mimicked him perfectly. Other times, it smiled when he didn't. The descent. One night, unable to sleep, Jessie stared into the mirror. His reflection winked, then spoke, its voice low and hypnotic. "Why fight it? We can be free. Together." Jessie felt his resolve falter. Memories surfaced, failures, regrets, fears. The reflection offered solace, power, escape. Jessie's hand trembled as he reached toward the glass. Lila's intervention. A sudden noise behind him startled Jessie. Lila burst into the room, eyes blazing with urgency. "No!" she shouted, grabbing his wrist. Jessie jerked back, panting. Lila knelt beside him. "You're stronger than it thinks. Don't give it the control." Her words grounded him. But the mirror pulsed, alive and hungry. A plan emerges. Lila explained that the mirror was more than a trap. It was a prison for countless souls, and a doorway for a dark entity known only as the Collector. "Destroying the mirror won't end it," she said. "We need to sever its connection to our world." Jessie nodded, determination returning. "We'll need to find the original mirror, the one Silas Grieve made, and perform a final ritual." Journey to the past. Their search led them to old archives and forgotten libraries. Ancient texts described Silas's mirror as a key, forged with cursed silver and imbued with dark magic. They discovered that the original mirror was rumored to be hidden beneath an abandoned chapel outside the city. The chapel. The night was moonless as Jessie and Lila approached the crumbling ruins. Vines crept over broken stained glass. The air smelled of damp stone and forgotten prayers. Inside, the darkness was complete, except for the faint glow of the mirror resting on an altar, untouched by time. The cracked glass shimmered, swirling with shadows. The final confrontation. As they approached, the mirror's surface rippled violently. The Collector emerged, a figure made of fractured reflections and shadows, with eyes like burning coals. Its voice was a chorus of lost souls. "You seek to end me?" Jessie stood firm. "We seek to free the trapped, to end your hunger." The Collector laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Battle of wills." Lila began the ritual, chanting the ancient words. The mirror flared with light and shadow. Jessie felt a force trying to pull him into the glass. He struggled, remembering Lila's words. The trapped souls inside the mirror cried out, reaching for freedom. With a final, desperate push, Jessie shattered the mirror with a heavy stone. Aftermath. Light exploded, filling the chapel. When the dust settled, the mirror was gone. The collector's screams faded into silence. Jessie and Lila stood together, exhausted but victorious. New beginnings. Back in the city, Jessie felt the weight lift. The whispers ceased. His reflection finally mirrored him perfectly. But in the back of his mind, a question lingered. Had the darkness truly ended? Or had it simply found a new way to survive? The reflection, New Blood. Part 16. Fragments of Darkness. The shattered mirror pieces lay scattered in the ancient chapel's dust. But the darkness did not vanish. It seeped into the cracks of the stones, winding like smoke through the empty halls. Jessie and Lila stepped outside, the cold night air biting at their skin. The city around them was quiet, unaware of the ancient evil they had disturbed. "We broke it," Jessie said, voice hoarse but hopeful. Lila's eyes scanned the shadows. "Maybe, but broken things still have sharp edges. Pieces can still cut." Back to the city. Days later, Jessie returned to his apartment. The first night without the mirror felt like a dream. No whispers. No cold touches. Just silence. But as he passed a shop window, his reflection flickered. Just for a moment, showing not him but a dark void. Jessie stopped, heart racing. Was it a trick of the light? Or was the darkness still watching? The whispering begins. In the following weeks, strange things began happening around the city. People reported fleeting reflections that didn't match reality. Some saw faces in mirrors that weren't theirs. Others felt eyes watching from glass surfaces, windows, phones, even camera lenses. Reports spread online, photos showing impossible reflections, videos with shadows moving on their own. Lila's warning. Jessie called Lila, voice shaking. "They're waking up," he said. "The fragments, they're spreading." Lila's response was grim. The collector's shards carry its essence. Anyone who looks into those fragments risks being pulled in. "We have to find them," Jessie said, "before more people get trapped." Hunting the fragments. Together, Jessie and Lila began tracking reports, following the trail of disturbed reflections. One by one, they located the shards, hidden in thrift stores, private collections, and even online auctions. Each shard hummed with a faint dark energy, a silent scream begging to be freed or consumed. The new victims. In a quiet suburb, a teenager named Maya found a small shard buried in her grandmother's attic. She took it to her room, fascinated by the swirling shadows trapped within. At night, Maya's reflection began to move on its own. She heard whispers calling her name. She tried to throw the shard away, but it always returned, slipping back into her possession like a cursed gift. The spiral. Maya's dreams grew darker, filled with twisted forests and endless mirrors. Her reflection grinned at her, promising power and escape from loneliness. She stopped talking to friends. Her parents grew worried. Meanwhile, Jessie and Lila raced to her town, but the darkness was already closing in. The final stand. Jessie, Lila, and Maya confronted the growing nightmare together. Using the Watcher's rituals and ancient symbols, they battled the shadows leaking from the shard. Maya's reflection tried to pull her into the glass prison. But with Jessie's help, she resisted. The shard shattered, again. But at what cost? Maya looked at her hands, pale, trembling. She was free. But something had changed. A faint shadow lingered behind her eyes. And in the mirror, a dark smile watched, waiting. The cycle continues. The pieces of the original mirror may be gone. But the darkness is patient. And mirrors, after all, are everywhere, waiting for the next gaze, the next flicker, the next soul. The reflection, New Blood. Part 17. The Shadow Within. The morning sun filtered weakly through Maya's bedroom window, but the light felt muted, as if something had dimmed the world. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the cracked shard she had smashed the night before. The peace was gone now, shattered to dust. Or so she hoped. But the shadow lingered. In the mirror, her reflection smiled, a slow, crooked grin that didn't reach her eyes. A new presence. Over the next days, Maya noticed changes she couldn't explain. Sometimes, when she looked in a mirror or glass, she didn't see herself but the shadow. It whispered to her, soft and cold, "Let go. Join me." Her thoughts drifted away at strange moments. She forgot things she should remember. Her friends noticed. "Are you okay?" they asked. Maya forced a smile. "Fine." But inside, the shadow was growing. Lila's return. Hearing of the new trouble, Lila arrived at Maya's house, eyes wary and tired. "This shadow," Lila said, "is the darkness's residue. When the mirror's shards break, pieces of the collector's essence remain. It can latch onto a host." Maya felt her pulse quicken. "Can it be removed?" Lila shook her head. "Not easily. It's a battle of wills. You have to fight it every day." The battle inside. Maya began to fight the shadow, in waking hours and dreams. At night, she entered a mirrored realm, where her reflection twisted and changed, taunting her. She saw herself trapped behind glass walls, reaching out desperately. The shadow offered promises: power, freedom from fear and pain, escape from loneliness. But every offer came with a price. A fragile alliance. Jessie and Lila taught Maya rituals to strengthen her mind. Daily chants, protective symbols drawn in salt and charcoal. Maya's strength grew. But so did the shadow's cunning. It whispered lies, sowed doubt, tried to turn her friends and family against her. The breaking point. One evening, Maya stood before a large mirror in her living room. The shadow emerged fully in her reflection, a dark, beautiful version of herself, eyes glowing red. "Give in," it urged. Maya's hands shook. Her heart pounded. But she refused. With a cry, she smashed the mirror. Shards flew everywhere, and for a moment, silence. Then, a faint whisper. "This isn't over." Hope and fear. Maya was exhausted but free, for now. She looked at her hands, scarred but steady. She was no longer a victim but a fighter. Yet deep inside, a flicker of doubt remained. The shadow was patient, waiting for the moment Maya's guard would fall. A new threat. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, the thin man from the auction house, the one who once smiled at Elena trapped inside a mirror, collected another ancient artifact. He whispered softly to himself, "The darkness grows. Soon, it will be time." The reflection, new blood. Part 18, The Fractured Mind. Maya's bedroom was silent, but for the faint rustling of curtains swayed by a restless breeze. The sun dipped low behind the city skyline, casting long, flickering shadows that seemed to reach for her. She sat on the edge of her bed, head bowed, fingers trembling as she clutched a small amulet Lila had given her, a circle etched with runes meant to ward off darkness. The room felt too cold, too still, like the breath of something waiting just beyond the veil of the mundane. Her reflection stared back from the window pane across the room, but this time, it wasn't quite right. The eyes glimmered red, faint smoke-like tendrils curling from the corners. The reflection smiled, slow, serpentine, cruel. Maya blinked hard. The eyes returned to their normal hazel. But she knew. The shadow inside was stirring. A war inside. For days, Maya's waking moments became a battleground. The shadow whispered from the recesses of her mind, weaving poison into her thoughts. "You don't belong here. They'll never understand you. Let go. I can show you freedom." She fought it with everything she had, the rituals Lila taught her, the protective symbols drawn in salt circles, the grounding techniques to hold onto reality. But the shadow was relentless. When Maya closed her eyes, the darkness surged forth, wrapping tendrils of doubt around her heart. She began to lose time. Minutes, sometimes hours, would vanish like she was somewhere else, trapped in a mirrored nightmare. Lila's visit. One cold evening, just as the sky bruised purple and navy, Lila arrived at Maya's apartment unannounced. Maya barely opened the door before collapsing into Lila's arms, tears tracing cold lines down her cheeks. "I can't. It's getting worse," Maya whispered, voice breaking. Lila nodded solemnly. "The shadow feeds on fear and loneliness. It's trying to break you so it can fully possess your soul." Maya looked up, desperation in her eyes. "Can I ever be free?" Lila pulled out an old worn book from her bag, the same ledger that held secrets from the Watcher's ancestors. "There's one ritual," Lila said quietly. "One chance to bind the shadow, trap it forever. But it's dangerous. You'll have to face it in its own realm." Maya swallowed hard. "I'm ready." The ritual. That night, they prepared a sacred space in Maya's living room. Salt and ash traced intricate patterns on the floor, candles flickered with unnatural blue flames, and ancient runes were painted along the walls. Lila began chanting in a forgotten tongue, her voice steady but urgent. Maya closed her eyes, clutching the amulet. Suddenly, the room warped. The walls seemed to ripple like water. Maya felt herself falling through glass and darkness, deeper and deeper into a realm beyond time, the mirror realm. When Maya opened her eyes, she stood in a distorted version of her apartment. The colors were muted, shadows hung thick and heavy, and every surface reflected not her, but a dark double. From the corner of her vision, the shadow emerged, tall, lithe, and terrifyingly beautiful. Its eyes burned like embers, a smile twisting its face. "Welcome home," it hissed. Maya's heart hammered. She gripped the amulet. "I'm not yours," she said, voice shaking but firm. The shadow laughed, a sound like shattered glass. "We're one. You need me. You want me." Maya stepped forward, reciting the binding chant Lila had taught her. The shadow screamed, thrashing as invisible chains wrapped around it, tightening. A desperate escape. Suddenly, the shadow lunged, merging with Maya's form. She felt darkness flooding her senses, seeping into her skin, into her bones. But something inside her fought back, her memories, her love for her friends, her desire to live. With a final cry, she broke free, tumbling backward into a shimmering portal. She fell through light and shadow until she landed hard on the floor of her living room, gasping. Lila was there, eyes wide with relief. The aftermath. Though Maya was free of the shadow's immediate grip, its mark remained. Occasionally, when she looked in mirrors or window reflections, she saw a flicker, just a second, of that dark smile. She wasn't sure if the shadow was waiting, watching, or lurking somewhere deeper within her. Jesse's nightmare. Meanwhile, Jesse was battling his own demons. Since the chapel ritual, he had tried to return to a semblance of normal life, but the mirror's fragments haunted his dreams. Every night, the shattered mirror's edges glinted in the darkness of his room. He heard whispers growing louder. One night, he awoke to see a figure in the corner, a distorted reflection of himself, with eyes like burning coals. It stepped closer, voice a cruel echo. "You can't escape me," Jesse screamed, jolting awake, drenched in sweat. Lila's burden. Lila knew the fight was far from over. The Watcher's order had dwindled through the centuries, and few believed in their warnings anymore. She spent her days tracking reports of strange reflections and mysterious disappearances linked to mirror shards. In the quiet moments, she pored over the ledger, searching for answers. One passage caught her eye. When the collector rises anew, the world's reflections will fracture, and only those bound by the Watcher's oath may stand against the coming darkness. The collector's plan. Far from the city, in a cold, dimly lit chamber lined with glass shards of every size and shape, the thin man from the auction house stood before an altar. He was known only as the collector, a being not quite human, not quite shadow, who fed on souls trapped within mirrors. He whispered to the fragments, his voice low and hungry. "Soon, the shadows will spread beyond the glass. The fractured world will be mine." A new mirror formed in his hands, its surface swirling with darkness and light. A call to arms. Lila sent word to Jesse and Maya. The time had come for all of them to unite. They met in a hidden sanctuary beneath the city. an ancient hall filled with relics, mirrors, and symbols of power. Lila addressed them solemnly. This is no longer just about one mirror. The collector's reach is growing. If we don't act, the shadows will consume everything. Jesse clenched his fists. Then let's finish this. Maya nodded, determination blazing in her eyes despite the lingering shadow inside. The final ritual. Together, they prepared for the final confrontation. Candles blazed, ancient words filled the air, and protective runes glowed softly around them. They would face the collector in his realm, a place where reality and reflection blurred. The battle would test their minds, souls, and the very fabric of their existence. The reflection, new blood. Part 20, echoes in the glass. The sanctuary's heavy doors groaned shut behind them, the last tendrils of light from the shattered mirror realm flickering out like dying embers. Jesse, Maya, and Lila lay sprawled on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. The air inside was thick, but lighter than before. A fragile peace had been won. Lila was the first to rise, her hand steady as she pulled the ancient ledger from her satchel. The collector's power is broken, but not destroyed. His essence lingers in every shard of mirror glass on this earth. Jesse rubbed his forehead, still haunted by the image of his dark reflection snarling at him. So, it's like a virus? We stop one, but the infection could be anywhere. Lila nodded grimly. Exactly. The shards are seeds of his darkness, scattered across the world. Until every piece is found and cleansed, the threat remains. Maya looked down at her hands, the amulet still glowing faintly around her neck. What about me? The shadow, it's gone, but I still feel it sometimes. Lila's gaze softened. The shadow is part of you now, a reminder of what you faced. But you're stronger than it. You have to fight it every day, or it will try to claim you again. Aftermath. Back in their own lives, the three struggled with what they had endured. Jesse returned to his apartment, but found it hard to sleep. Every mirror, every reflective surface seemed to shimmer with hidden meaning. He began covering mirrors, avoiding windows at night, afraid the darkness would reach through. Maya felt an ache in her chest, a mix of relief and lingering fear. The shadow wasn't gone, only pushed back. She started keeping the amulet close, reciting Lila's chants as a shield against the creeping dark. Lila disappeared back into the shadows, continuing her search for fragments and protecting others from falling prey to the cursed reflections. The city's quiet watch. But the city itself had changed. People reported strange sightings, fleeting reflections in storefront windows showing faces that weren't there, whispers echoing from glass surfaces, shadows moving where no light should fall. Rumors spread of a dark watcher stalking the night, a shadow slipping through mirrors, waiting. The thin man from the auction house, the collector's lingering agent, moved silently among the city's forgotten corners, gathering shards, patient and calculating. A new ally. One night, Jesse received a mysterious message. You are not alone. The Watchers have allies in unexpected places. Find me. Attached was a cryptic symbol, an eye surrounded by fractured glass. Jesse's heart raced. Could this be a new hope? Or a trap? The cycle continues. Mirrors everywhere, home, work, city streets, held secrets now. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Because darkness, like a broken reflection, can never be fully destroyed. It waits. It watches. And it will always find a way back. The Reflection. New Blood. Part 23. The Mirror Nexus. The city's restless night air clung to Jesse's skin as he and Mara stood on the rooftop of a crumbling building, gazing toward the horizon where neon signs flickered like distant stars. The Mirror Nexus, a hidden intersection of fractured realities, was their destination, but no one truly knew what awaited them inside. Mara folded the map carefully, her expression unreadable. It's a place where all shards bleed into one another, a nexus of broken glass and broken souls. Dangerous and unpredictable. Jesse nodded, feeling the weight of the amulet warm against his chest. If we don't cleanse it, the collector will reclaim his full power. The gathering. Their small group, Jesse, Mara, Elena, Marcus, and a few others, met in a concealed basement beneath an old church. The air smelled faintly of wax and old stone. Lila's ledger lay open, its pages filled with rituals and warnings. Mara traced a finger over a worn symbol, a web of fractured mirrors surrounding a dark center. "This is the key," she said. "But to enter the Nexus, we have to perform a ritual that will open the gateway, and it will test us in ways we can't predict." Jesse felt the familiar stirring inside him, the shadow waiting, watching. "We do this together," he said firmly. "No one left behind." The ritual of opening. Under the cold light of a full moon, they gathered in a circle etched with ancient runes. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Mara led the chant, her voice weaving the spell that pulled at the fabric of reality. The air shimmered, and a swirling vortex of broken mirrors tore open before them. From its depths, a cold wind rushed, carrying whispers of forgotten memories and fractured identities. With a collective breath, they stepped through. Inside the Nexus, they emerged into a labyrinth unlike any place on Earth. The walls were mirrors, reflecting infinite versions of themselves, some twisted, some peaceful, some screaming in agony. The ground beneath was glass shards, sharp and glittering like stars. Jesse's reflection stepped forward, but this one wasn't his enemy. It smiled gently, eyes filled with sorrow. "Welcome to the Nexus," it said. "Here, all broken things are whole, and all whole things are broken." Trial of shadows. The Nexus warped time and space. Memories played like films in the glass walls, their past fears, failures, and hidden truths. Jesse faced visions of his childhood, lonely, afraid, abandoned. Maya's shadow whispering doubts in his ear. The faces of those he failed. Mara battled her own demons, mistakes buried deep beneath years of strength. Elena's shadow fought to claim her completely. Each step through the Nexus was a battle, not just with the darkness outside, but with the darkness within. The fractured strike. Suddenly, the calm shattered. Corvin and his cult emerged from fractured mirrors like creeping tendrils of night. "The Nexus belongs to us," Corvin shouted, eyes blazing with madness. "The Collector's reign will begin anew." A fierce battle erupted. Mirrors shattered, shards flying like deadly knives. Shadows twisted and clashed with light. Jesse fought beside Mara, their movements synchronized, chanting and striking with ancient power. Sacrifice and salvation. As the battle reached its peak, Elena's shadow broke free, lunging at her with rage. Jesse caught her, holding her trembling form. "Fight it, Elena. You're stronger than this." With a cry, she shattered the shadow from within, a blinding explosion of light and dark. The Nexus trembled, the shards pulsing in response. Mara began the cleansing ritual, chanting words of binding and healing. The Collector's last breath. Corvin screamed in fury as the Nexus began to collapse, its fractured mirrors sealing. The Collector's power waned, his essence dissolving into the shards. With one final burst, the darkness receded, leaving silence. Return to the world. Jesse and the group found themselves back in the sanctuary, breathless but victorious. The shards they carried were inert, cleansed, their power broken, but the cost was etched into their souls. The reflection remains. Jesse looked at a broken mirror shard on the table, a faint glimmer of movement beneath its surface. The war was won, but the reflection never truly fades. The reflection, new blood. Part 23, The Mirror Nexus. The city's restless night air clung to Jesse's skin as he and Mara stood on the rooftop of a crumbling building, gazing toward the horizon where neon signs flickered like distant stars. The Mirror Nexus, a hidden intersection of fractured realities, was their destination, but no one truly knew what awaited them inside. Mara folded the map carefully, her expression unreadable. "It's a place where all shards bleed into one another, a nexus of broken glass and broken souls. Dangerous and unpredictable." Jesse nodded, feeling the weight of the amulet warm against his chest. "If we don't cleanse it, the collector will reclaim his full power. The gathering. Their small group, Jesse, Mara, Elena, Marcus, and a few others, met in a concealed basement beneath an old church. The air smelled faintly of wax and old stone. Lila's ledger lay open, its pages filled with rituals and warnings. Mara traced a finger over a worn symbol, a web of fractured mirrors surrounding a dark center. "This is the key," she said. "But to enter the Nexus, we have to perform a ritual that will open the gateway, and it will test us in ways we can't predict." Jesse felt the familiar stirring inside him, the shadow waiting, watching. "We do this together," he said firmly. "No one left behind." The ritual of opening. Under the cold light of a full moon, they gathered in a circle etched with ancient runes. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Mara led the chant, her voice weaving the spell that pulled at the fabric of reality. The air shimmered, and a swirling vortex of broken mirrors tore open before them. From its depths, a cold wind rushed, carrying whispers of forgotten memories and fractured identities. With a collective breath, they stepped through. Inside the Nexus, they emerged into a labyrinth unlike any place on Earth. The walls were mirrors, reflecting infinite versions of themselves, some twisted, some peaceful, some screaming in agony. The ground beneath was glass shards, sharp and glittering like stars. Jesse's reflection stepped forward, but this one wasn't his enemy. It smiled gently, eyes filled with sorrow. "Welcome to the Nexus," it said. "Here, all broken things are whole, and all whole things are broken." Trial of shadows. The Nexus warped time and space. Memories played like films in the glass walls, their past fears, failures, and hidden truths. Jesse faced visions of his childhood, lonely, afraid, abandoned. Maya's shadow whispering doubts in his ear. The faces of those he failed. Mara battled her own demons, mistakes buried deep beneath years of strength. Elena's shadow fought to claim her completely. Each step through the Nexus was a battle, not just with the darkness outside, but with the darkness within. The fractured strike. Suddenly, the calm shattered. Corvin and his cult emerged from fractured mirrors like creeping tendrils of night. "The Nexus belongs to us," Corvin shouted, eyes blazing with madness. "The Collector's reign will begin anew." A fierce battle erupted. Mirrors shattered, shards flying like deadly knives. Shadows twisted and clashed with light. Jesse fought beside Mara, their movements synchronized, chanting and striking with ancient power. Sacrifice and salvation. As the battle reached its peak, Elena's shadow broke free, lunging at her with rage. Jesse caught her, holding her trembling form. "Fight it, Elena. You're stronger than this." With a cry, she shattered the shadow from within, a blinding explosion of light and dark. The Nexus trembled, the shards pulsing in response. Mara began the cleansing ritual, chanting words of binding and healing. The Collector's last breath. Corvin screamed in fury as the Nexus began to collapse, its fractured mirrors sealing. The Collector's power waned, his essence dissolving into the shards. With one final burst, the darkness receded, leaving silence. Return to the world. Jesse and the group found themselves back in the sanctuary, breathless but victorious. The shards they carried were inert, cleansed, their power broken. But the cost was etched into their souls. The reflection remains. Jesse looked at a broken mirror shard on the table, a faint glimmer of movement beneath its surface. The war was won, but the reflection never truly fades. The reflection, new blood. Part 21, The Watcher's Mark. Jesse sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, the cryptic message burning in his mind. The eye surrounded by fractured glass was unlike any symbol he had seen before, ancient yet strangely modern, like a mark left by someone both old and alive. He glanced around, feeling the weight of countless mirrors watching him silently. He'd covered most of them since returning from the Collector's realm, but some he couldn't avoid: his phone screen, the kitchen window, the darkened TV. He touched the amulet Maya had given him, feeling its faint warmth. "You're not alone," Those words echoed in his mind. The search begins. Jesse's first move was to return to Lila's last known location, the small library where she had first introduced him to the Watcher's lore. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and dust. Shelves towered with ancient tomes, and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights felt out of place in this forgotten corner of the city. He found the ledger she'd left on a table, her notes in careful, looping script describing rituals, mirror fragments, and the history of the Watchers. But the ledger held a new entry, a single line beneath a symbol matching the one in the message. Find the eye of the shattered, guardian of the unseen. No name, no address, just that. A stranger in the shadows. Determined, Jesse followed the clues scattered through the ledger and city. He visited old bookstores, antique shops, even a derelict church rumored to be a Watcher's meeting place centuries ago. One night, in a shadowy cafe filled with eclectic patrons, he met a woman named Mara. She was sharp-eyed, dressed in black leather with a silver pendant that mirrored the symbol on Jesse's message. "I've been expecting you," she said, voice low. Jesse's heart raced. "Who are you?" "A Watcher," Mara replied. "Like Lila, but different. I guard what she can't reach. The Watcher's hidden network." Mara explained the Watchers weren't a single order but a fractured network. Over centuries, they splintered, some loyal to protecting humanity from the Collector and his darkness, others tempted or corrupted. "The Collector's influence spreads," Mara warned. "He's rebuilding his power through shards scattered worldwide. Each piece is a seed of chaos." She showed Jesse a map marked with glowing points, the shards' locations. "To stop him, we need to cleanse every shard. And for that, we need more than just strength. We need unity." The weight of the past. Jesse felt the crushing weight of history. The Collector wasn't just an ancient evil, he was a curse etched into the very fabric of reality. The Watchers were guardians bound by blood and oath, sacrificing everything to hold back the darkness. Lila had been one of the last true Watchers. Now, Jesse had to step into that role. But the shadows inside him still lingered, reminders of the cost. A dark message. Days later, Jesse found a package slipped under his door. Inside was a shard of mirror glass, small but pulsing with a faint, eerie light. Attached was a note. "You cannot run from the reflection." Jesse stared at the shard, the shadows flickering inside like a living thing. He knew this was a challenge, a taunt from the Collector or his agents. He had to act fast. Gathering allies. Jesse and Mara reached out to others, people marked by the darkness but fighting back. Among them was Marcus, a former detective whose reflection once tried to trap him, Elena, who had escaped the mirror prison years ago, and several others scattered across the city. Together, they formed a fragile alliance, united by shared trauma and the will to fight. Training sessions began, learning rituals, strengthening minds, and preparing for confrontations with the shards. The Shard Hunt. Their first mission was to retrieve a shard rumored to be hidden in the basement of an abandoned theater. The group navigated the crumbling corridors, mirrors lining the walls reflecting twisted versions of themselves. As they approached the shard, the air grew cold, whispers filled their ears, and shadows danced at the edges of vision. Suddenly, the shard pulsed, releasing a wave of dark energy. Jesse felt the shadows stir within him, but this time he resisted, drawing on the strength of the group, the amulet, and Mara's teachings. Together, they sealed the shard in a protective box etched with binding runes. The cost of victory. But each shard cleansed came with a price. The darkness retaliated, threatening their minds, their loved ones, their very souls. Jesse's nightmares grew worse, the shadow clawing at his will. Mara warned him, "The Collector is testing you. He wants you broken." A new threat emerges. Meanwhile, far beyond the city, a cult devoted to the darkness gathered. They called themselves the Fractured, believers who saw the Collector as a god to be worshipped. Their leader, a mysterious figure named Corvin, sought to accelerate the spread of the shards, plunging the world into chaos. The stage was set for a confrontation far beyond anything Jesse or the Watchers had faced before. The fight ahead. Jesse looked at the symbol etched on his palm, a mark of the Watchers and a reminder of the burden he carried. The war was just beginning, and the shadows were growing.